What is up, beauties? This is the Bear of Texas right back at you for another episode of the Bear of Texas podcast. But today, we are representing the Playmakers blog. Let me be so happy to welcome back Wiley, aka the Venomous Stare. Wiley, it's an honor to have you back here on the show, and it's an honor to have you also representing the Playmakers blog.
Well, it's good to be with Playmakers, and it's good to be back on the podcast, Alex. Let's talk a little bit about the virus and how it's been affecting sports.
Well, first of all, fuck the virus. Fuck it, damn it to hell. I can insult it I want, but really, it's not gonna help. We gotta pray, we gotta stay strong. We got this. But yes, the virus is really affecting the world of sports because over half a dozen players and coaches, including here in the United States, have tested positive. In the last 3 hours or so, Sean Payton has been affected, and we just received word that 2 players from the Los Angeles Lakers have been tested positive for corona.
That's true, Alex. There have been several positive tests, but more significantly to many of us, the season has pretty much been halted in every sport. And it was NHL and NBA playoffs, which were some of the first things to go, and they went very quickly. And then crushingly, opening day was halted. And because the playoffs hadn't yet started, it wasn't as big of a deal, I think, than baseball's opening day because you can always just make the playoff series shorter in the NBA and NHL. But with baseball, the whole point is that it lasts so long and you have to play so many games. So the fact that a virus would time like this and things would start getting shut down a week before opening day is pretty unprecedented. And in terms of as much damage it's going to do this season, I think you would have to go back to the 94 strike as a time where games were taken away. But a lot of games were taken away in 82 as well. Those are really the only 2 recent comparisons we've had. And I think it's interesting to consider the impact on a player's career. And people who consult baseball reference and history of baseball all the time you will sort of have to factor in why so many games were out this season. And I think you can always push the playoffs back a couple months, but I don't think anyone intends on making the season go any more than like 21 days longer. I think they might just straight cancel all the games. My recommendation is that they should put on double headers because I think that would be the best way to try to make up some of the games. And if about 60 are lost, you can make the season the same amount of days and play double headers and get a lot of those games back. And I think these bizarre best of 2s that have off games on the side of them, like the series that was going to occur in Colorado that I was going to cover and attend, they'll probably just cancel that game. Hypothetically, what they should do, they're going to have 4 in Texas this year. They should either go back up to Colorado or just play a doubleheader in Texas. They should try to squeeze some of these weird one-off interleague games that the schedule has into games that they can double up on, even if it wasn't scheduled. You could even play back-to-back doubleheaders if you really wanted to, if it was in September when you had all the called-up players. But I think baseball has a real duty to get in as many of the games as possible. I don't think that's what they will do. I think they're lazy and they'll just cancel the games and not plan on playing any of them out. That's the biggest impact, sports-wise, of what's going to happen to the season, to my eyes, Alex.
Well, that's in a baseball perspective. But also, when it comes to baseball's suspensions/cancellations, they've happened before. Like, as you said, back in 1994 for the players' strike and 82. And then also in the NBA because of the lockout. But what makes this so different than an NBA lockout is this is all because of a virus. I mean, this has to do with, safety of the fans, of the players, of the personnel, of the franchise overall. And speaking of baseball, so far, I mean, unless my ears are deceiving, or maybe I just haven't been paying attention, I don't think any baseball players have tested positive, or if there's been any rumors about a player being, infected with the virus.
Well, I remember a baseball executive did get sick, but that's not a player, obviously. And you read off at large a lot of the names, and if you want to mention any others, you can go ahead. But
well, be glad to. Well, don't know if I should say I'd be glad to, but the sports figures that apparently have tested positive include the following: Rudy Gobert, who plays for the Utah Jazz, also
right, and he's
Donovan
the one that
Mitchell,
touched all the mics that plays basketball.
And Rudy, if I'm correct, he was the first player to be officially diagnosed, was he not?
I think he was, and that's the real thing that sparked it off because the NBA was the first to shut down.
From
Do
what
you
I
think that he
understand,
should?
he was affected on the 11th, and then his teammate Donovan Mitchell was announced that the diagnosis was announced March 12th on the next day.
He tested positive too. He got his teammates sick. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean Rudy Gobert. I mean Rudy Gobert went as far to apologize because he said it was like reckless behavior. But the list goes on. I mean, Michael Arteta, the manager of Arsenal over in Europe, the club, recently tested positive, but I don't think any of the players did. But as a precaution, they have to, shut down. Right now, over 15 soccer players, I believe in Italy, have tested positive, and a Frenchman of Blaise Matuidi, who plays for Juventus, tested positive. But also Christian Wood of the Detroit Pistons was diagnosed. As I'm looking, an unnamed player for the Seattle Dragons as well. Okay, an unnamed minor league player for the New York Yankees who's diagnosed on the 15th. Another minor league player for the Yankees, and then as we know, Kevin Durant was diagnosed just over 48 hours ago, along with three unnamed players of the Brooklyn Nets. And earlier today, we learned Sean Payton was officially diagnosed, and then just a little bit later, two players of the Lakers, and also overall, actually earlier today as well, three players of the Philadelphia 76ers organization. So I don't know what to expect next. I mean, I don't know who's next on the list, but I can just tell you that it's not far from over.
That's very true, Alex. In terms of the sicknesses, most significant one in America was definitely Rudy Gobert because that sparked off all the suspensions. But like you said, Italians are having a big problem with it as well right now.
I mean, Italy, the death toll in Italy actually, as a matter of fact, just surpassed China.
That's right. And you just have to consider that when they go to the different playoffs in the sports, not including the MLB, how do you think that they should be handled? Because both of them are best of seven all the way through from the first round to the last. Are they going to make some of these games best of five, best of three? Let's just make them best of one. Why not? All the way through. Why not, eh, Alex?
Well, I'm gonna be honest now. People probably think I'm being selfish when I say this. I think that suspending sports might have been a huge mistake. Look, I get it. The players' safety, the safety of the players, the coaches, etc., even the fans are a top priority. I totally get it. But is it really worth it? I mean, can't like owners, just have the. I mean, will it hurt to have the whole stadium or the court, whatever, sanitized every day? I mean, sure, it'll probably cost a lot of money, but what people have to understand is, with games being suspended, the league being suspended, the playoffs being canceled, a lot of money will be lost, and that's going to be more costly than not having the season go on, if you ask me. But
Well,
this is just my humble opinion. I mean, I could be selfish because obviously I'm a sports writer, as you are, and I'm obviously not happy that there are no sports around. I mean, the fact that soccer, in Europe, you being a soccer fanatic, is canceled. I mean, that's driving me crazy. But I understand at the same time the players over there, especially in Europe, are in big trouble, and they need to be safe.
yeah, well, they say the virus is so infectious where if you just get in a big group of people, they don't want a bunch of people getting sick, I guess.
Yeah, that's the part where I understand the most. But as far as having a huge impact on the sports, well, it's definitely going to have a large negative financial impact because I can't imagine how much money is going to be lost. But not only on the athletes and the team front offices, but the fans too.
Yeah, I feel like the XFL gets hit the hardest.
Well,
This might kill the X.
what makes you say it's the XFL?
Well, because the FXL was doing reasonably well and was starting to develop some interest and wasn't really gimmicky like a lot of people feared it would be. And now they really got screwed by the fact that again they got a few games into the season and ran into problems.
Wow. Well, very 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 good point. And honestly, I think
But the XFL
soccer's
doesn't
being hit
mean
hard
really.
because it's not only the Champions League, that's being suspended. All the domestic leagues like the Premier League in England, the Liga in Spain, League One in France, and the Serie A in Italy. It's not only the domestic soccer being suspended, but as of yesterday, we learned that Euro 2020 is suspended until next year. But also the complications out of that is next summer in 2021 the women's Euro is taking place, and also during that time the World Cup qualifying for the 2022 World Cup starting. So I think like delaying all that, it's going to cause so much complications. It's only going to interfere with the World Cup qualifications, and that just say that it makes the whole situation stressful. Wiley, that's just a simple understatement. because I don't even know how they can possibly resolve this.
Yeah, well, I've heard a lot of predictions as to how long it would be before this would be stopped, and I've heard all the way till August. I've heard 3 months, 2 months, even it might, oh, people are going to be sick for 18 months. Like it's going to get really bad. So it's sort of interesting to see how is going to play out even without sports.
I feel that it's going to come to a point if they're just going to keep delaying it and delaying it and delaying it, they might as well just terminate it and just say, well, the season will just end the way it is. No winner, no champion, no nothing. This will just be remembered in history that there was a virus. It was not safe to play. And then we move on to the next season. We start from scratch. I mean, I feel like that's probably the only logical way to go. Because if you're just gonna keep suspending it, postponing it, etc., however you want to describe it, you're gonna it's just gonna raise too many questions, and and the process of rescheduling these games. I mean, I can't imagine how stressful that is because, as you mentioned in baseball, maybe doing some double headers would be a good idea, but in soccer, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, soccer is a different sport because there's so many leagues, so there's almost too many solutions to talk about. That's sort of how I feel about it, even though I don't know a lot about soccer. They're just if you want to talk specifically about the MLB, Alex, how do you think you would do the schedule and would you change the format of the playoffs?
Well, I'm not sure how I can answer the question because I don't work in that field. I don't know like how they structure the schedule. What I would do
Okay,
is
well, baseball's best of one wild card, and then you have best of five through the first round and best of seven in the championship round, and then best of seven in the World Series.
well, it would have to depend on if there's a regular season at all, like how much of a regular season there is, and then like if they play like let's say they play half of
Like,
162 games,
okay,
I'd probably have to determine on the results, but I don't know if I would change the playoff format. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to do it. But to answer the question as best I can, I would do what's right and what's best for not only the players but for the teams and for the MLB overall, but for the history of the sports of baseball because baseball is America's favorite pastime. And if I was the commissioner, I would do my best. I would do what's right to make sure that the legacy is not tarnished because, as we know, baseball is already suffering because of the Astros cheating scandal. And personally, it would make me an asshole. I mean, I would be disgraced if I further damaged baseball.
well, I think one of the most important things is making up as many games as you can. Don't just be lazy and cancel every game that you missed. Like try to squeeze. You want to get as close to 162 as possible. And if you want to expand the roster, so a couple minor league guys who they acted like they weren't going to pay want to get called up, I think that's fine too. If you want to, you can add in a doubleheader with literally every team. Think about that. Every series, every best of three or best of four or best of two, especially, you want to put on a doubleheader. And that's really easy as far as if you're willing to do that in every series, you can definitely get 162 games. And, expand the roster a little bit if that is necessary, if people are getting exhausted. But you should try to make up these games. You shouldn't just cancel them. I think that's the wrong decision.
I agree because canceling games, it's not only gonna upset the teams or whatnot. It's the fans are gonna be upset more than anybody because a lot of fans pay a lot of money to go to these games, and when these games are canceled, and then it's such a I mean I can't imagine how much of a hassle it is to demand a refund or to wait for your refund in these kinds of situations. I can only imagine it's very brutal. But based on what you said, Wiley, you're absolutely right. But what I would do if I was to come up with a plan, I would probably call in meetings with all the owners of the teams and the GMs in front offices, so we could all work together as a plan. Because I feel like if we're gonna save baseball, everybody has to be on the same page. Same thing for basketball and same thing for hockey. For soccer, it's obviously going to be much harder because there's so many clubs, so many leagues and whatnot. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't know if I could be able to come up with a plan on my own. If I was, the head guy in charge, I would need some support as well.
Well, it's just a question that's basically saying, do you think that the format should be altered?
Right now, I say no. But if somehow we still get to play a full season, if even though it's delayed, if there's enough time to play a full season, then no, there's no need to change the format. We just go it as it is. We schedule it properly. It's just baseball's gonna have a different kind of season, and instead of ending in October, it's probably gonna end in December.
I think it's most irritating because baseball season is so long, and the first round of the playoffs is a best of five. It should be best of seven all the way through.
I
That's
agree. You know what?
ridiculous.
Okay, see, now that I see your point, I think changing it to the best of seven series on all the playoff series, I think would be good because it would actually make the playoffs more exciting, if you ask me. Especially
I
the
I agree, and I
yeah.
think the better team wins. You look at some of these teams that have a really top-heavy rotation in baseball, the best of five really benefits them. And I think that the Washington versus Dodgers series was really a good example of that, even though Corbin did pretty well in the series. They were able to really win based off of top-heavy pitching. But that's sort of the opposite of what I think is going to happen. I think that for the virus specifically, we're going to see less games, not more. But I definitely agree with you that in general, playoff baseball should be best of seven all the way through. I like the best of one wild card. I think that's fine. But the DS games, the first round, really need to be best of seven.
I mean, this whole coronavirus, suspending baseball, all this, it's really making us pull our hair out. But as we get on later, we're going to explain not only how this affects the players and athletes. We have to explain how this affects us sports writers. But we'll get to that soon. But now I want to move to basketball. I think basketball. I mean, it being suspended, this late, especially with hockey, with the playoffs being so close. See, from my perspective, Wiley, I do follow basketball. I mean, I write articles. I mean, you've seen all my Luka Doncic pieces. I think the NBA playoffs, much like the baseball playoffs, the NBA playoffs is where I actually sit down and actually make sure I catch the games because, it's the playoffs. And that's when things really get interesting. I mean, there's the upsets, there's all the surprises. I mean, NBA playoffs, it's like getting on a roller coaster. If somebody says, buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. I mean, that's basically what it is. You just don't know what to expect, and that's what makes it so unique.
I don't really think basketball is going to be that affected by the virus if you just compare it strictly to baseball. And the reason for that is they can just play their playoff bracket normally a couple months later and they play inside a stadium and they can just keep it the way that they were going to and move it back. Now the funny thing is if they just cancel the rest of the regular season games and the teams that are in the playoffs now just make the playoffs. And I think it's funny because of this reason. A lot of times in sports shows, you always hear the hypothetical if a team is hot. If the season ended today, the Rangers would be in the wild card spot, or a team would be in the division lead. And it's always set up if the season in right now, and it's like the middle of the season, this might be the one time where the season just randomly ends in some spot.
I don't even know what to expect. I mean, as long as they keep suspending, I'm just like, the more like delays there are. Like at first it said the MLB will only be suspended for 2 weeks, but now it's at least till middle of May. I'm kind of living as if there won't be the sport at all, but because here's a big point I'm gonna make. This is a simple point. How does the coronavirus impact sports? Well, it raises questions. A lot of people are gonna ask, when is it gonna end? Are we gonna have a full season? Are the players gonna be, are there gonna be like these conditions for the players' safety? There's a lot of questions, and what really affects it, as far as in the coronavirus's point, is we don't have answers because people are not gonna be happy when the representatives of the teams and the NBA if they just say we don't know. That's the big impact. It's bringing up questions, the questions that we just simply do not have answers to. I mean, these are just questions saying I don't know because anything can happen. All we can do about it is just pray and hope that it ends soon, and then there's a simple way to reschedule and put everything back on track. But right now, it really doesn't look like that's going to happen, and that really worries me, not only as a fan, but also as a sports writer.
Yeah, I think a lot of leagues are really going to be screwed up by this. And that's sort of an obvious thing to point out, but I think that when you look at the impact of it, especially on baseball, it's going to be really severe. And and a lot of these teams are in this weird position where if you look at a team like the Mavericks, they would make the playoffs as a low seed. They have 40 wins with a couple other teams, but more losses. And a team like the Brooklyn Nets, who is in the eighth playoff seed and is going to get killed, any of these bottom seed teams are sort of at risk of making the playoffs, luckily, and then the ninth seeds are obviously, a lot of times, if you were to look at things like this, some of these ninth seed teams are in a position to just miss the playoffs.
The whole thing is just, fantastic. See, and another thing that affects us, I mean, this will specifically affect the Mavericks because the Mavericks, have had so many rough years the last couple of years, and they're about to make the playoffs, which is going to make us happy. So, and when a virus, suspends everything, it's like it's literally ripping our hearts out. But I want to move on to hockey, Wiley. Now, so far we spoke about how the virus is affecting basketball and baseball, but now I want to ask you, since I know you're a huge hockey fan, how does the virus affect hockey? Especially because hockey, just like I said, part of the NBA, we're about to hit the playoffs. So
Well, I think they should do this with the NBA as well. Just not cancel the rest of the regular season games necessarily, but depending on how long the virus goes, if it goes all the way into August, then they should just play the playoffs with the current seeded teams, I believe, in both leagues. With baseball, it's different because it's the beginning of the season and there's so many games and they can play those doubleheaders. But they've already played so much of the NBA and NHL season. I think you just go with the current seeds and play the playoffs in the normal format. I don't think that there's any need to shrink the best of sevens down to best of fives
I
for the
agree.
NHL or the NBA. And it doesn't matter how long the virus goes.
Hey, this is Donovan the Playmaker Says. I want to take a moment to thank you guys for listening to us at the Playmakers Podcast. Just to let you know, if you're listening to us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, why don't you go ahead and leave us a review. Tell us what you think of the episodes that you listen to, what you think of the podcast in general. If you listen to, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Castbox, or any other platforms that we're on, follow us. Download the episodes, let us know any kind of way that you want to let us know, whether it's on our Facebook page, the Playmakers Podcast, or on our Twitter page at Playmakers Stuff. Just let us know, because we enjoy interacting with you guys and we want to show our appreciation. So follow us, like us, let us know how we're doing. And thank you for listening to the Playmakers Podcast.
See, I finally understand what you're saying. See, in the case of hockey and basketball, once that gets reinstated, maybe I think what you're trying to say is it would be better if they just simply start the playoffs right now and have the teams eligible just be in the way it is and just
Right.
get it over with. See, I
Yeah.
agree, because if you're just gonna start out the regular season, you're just you're taking up too much time. And
Well, they've already
it's
played so many
conflicting.
games.
They've played so many games, but not only that, if they're just gonna pick up where they left off, I mean, it's gonna be to say that's gonna create some schedule conflicts. I mean, that's a major understatement. And then that stress level, it rises probably 500%. I mean, I can't say, but I mean, I don't know how stressful it will be. I mean, I'm not in their shoes, but I can imagine it's not gonna be a simple task to resolve the whole damn thing.
Yeah. And I think if the thing is we're talking about the virus almost as though it has its own mind or something, where I think what we're really talking about is like how scared of it people are and how people are supposedly trying to keep it from spreading so severely. And it's just the fear and hysteria could go on so long where sports is severely affected.
I mean, the whole thing is just so sad. All right, so now that we've covered hockey, and hockey, as you said, is the same thing with basketball. Now I want to get to the NFL. So far, there's been nothing really affecting the NFL. Although I heard that the 2020 NFL draft will be empty. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen on schedule, but no one's gonna attend, and the players obviously won't be there. Like, in my opinion, Wiley, this is really nothing that's gonna affect it, because honestly, I feel like the draft. I mean, having some fans there, I guess, is cool, but I always kind of ask, why are I mean, especially in the first one, why do the players really have to be there? Like, can't they just talk on the phone from home? I mean, not all first round picks have actually been in the draft themselves. I remember Des Bryant, when we drafted him back in 2010, he was at home. So I kind of feel like it's really not going to affect much.
Yeah, the draft is really boring and overblown anyway, even if you're a big football fan.
I mean, I feel like, well, I think the first round's definitely exciting, but I think like maybe after the second round things go like, whatever. I'll just get the updates on my phone, but
To me, it's more about what people your favorite team drafted and maybe like a handful of the top guys.
oh, now as we get straight to the point, do you think the football season is going to be affected at all by this?
No.
See, I don't think so either because I think by the time we hit September, the whole virus is going to be gone. I mean, people are really going to be making jokes about it. Like people are going to say, "Oh yeah, a couple of months ago we were in apocalypse. Now look at us, everything's back to normal." And then I just can't imagine what's going on with baseball, basketball, and hockey. But speaking of that, see, one of the biggest like punches to the face that the coronavirus has done, specifically to basketball fans, is the cancellation of March Madness. Now, I've been asked like how it affects me because I don't know if you know. I mean, I'm not too into March Madness. Like, I haven't filled out a bracket since probably since 2013. And this year I was thinking of doing it because the handler, the owner, the founder of the Playmakers blog is a huge basketball guy, and he suggested doing part of the bracket. Thinking it would be a career boost, and I said sure, no problem. And I feel like not having March Madness. I mean, it makes me feel bad for the fans because March Madness tickets. I mean, they're expensive. I mean, not only the tickets, the travel, the hotel, because people have to buy those in advance, at least probably 3 months. So I'm kind of hoping with the whole thing canceled, I hope they get their money back. But what I really feel bad for, aside from the fans, is the players. I mean, just imagine you're a senior, and the March Madness is canceled. I mean, that's gonna affect not only your career, but that's gonna affect your life because you have to live with that. I mean, that coronavirus. I mean, doing that with March Madness, that's a slap to the face.
Yeah, they were going to give the juniors another year of eligibility, or the seniors rather, but it's still really awful to have those games canceled.
I mean, it is because I mean, even if I was a freshman basketball player, because a lot of freshmen would leave school early. Honestly, I would just look at it and say, well, I wasn't gonna leave. I wasn't gonna leave school after my freshman year anyway. I wasn't gonna leave until I get my degree. So if I'm a freshman, I'm like, well, I got at least 2 more years left. I'm gonna make the most of those. It's not the end of the world. I can just train, get healthy, and be ready for the next season. All I can do is move on.
That's true.
And talking back about the negative financial loss, I mean, I just can't imagine. Like, I mean, March Madness is probably up there along with soccer, as far as as far as the money being lost goes. I mean, it's probably a tie between whether which one's worse. I would say it's a tie between soccer and March Madness, but it doesn't matter which one's worse. I mean, it sucks anyway.
So I think the MLB is going to screw it up so badly where it's going to be really bad on baseball.
I mean,
Awful.
in your case, that's gonna frustrate you because you're the baseball expert,
Yeah,
Wiley.
I'm a big baseball guy, so that's what I'm really concerned about. These teams that just have to play some best of sevens, it's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be weird, but yeah, if you were going to any of those late season games, it sucks. But overall, baseball is the sport that's really going to get fucked up.
Absolutely. So now that we've covered the sports, actually, you know what? Before we go, I don't know if you heard, but even professional wrestling. I mean, they're having the shows with the empty arenas.
Yeah,
But
that's
WrestleMania was supposed to take place at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. Now it's been moved to two locations. One of them's the WWE training center. I'm not sure where the other one is, and there will not be fans. I mean, now as far as professional wrestling goes, it's different because like a wrestler's he main events WrestleMania and there was nobody there. I mean that's really gotta suck. I mean WrestleMania is one of the most expensive like sporting events to go. I mean I don't know. So I'm not sure how deep into wrestling, professional wrestling you are, Wiley. I mean you're obviously not as big into it as I am, but
right. Not very much.
WrestleMania tickets like a front row seat probably cost I would say at least $7,000. And those
Yeah.
tickets, dude, you have to buy them at least. Keep in mind, folks, at least a year in advance. So if we thought the getting refunds for March Madness and then soccer was stressful, I mean, getting refunds for front row WrestleMania tickets, well, that's just that's 200 that's 200 more levels on top right there. I mean, because fans come from around the world.
What you gonna do, brother?
Well, what you gonna do when WrestleMania has no people? You see, so the point out of everything so far, how big of an impact this coronavirus has, it has a huge impact because it's damaging the image of sports. It's really just, it's like trying to ruin sports. It's trying to end it. It's like, the corona really, I would say the coronavirus simply hates sports, so it took them away.
Well, it's pretty brutal right now. If you're trying to do really anything in life, it's getting pushed back or delayed indefinitely.
So the biggest point is, what does the coronavirus impact have on sports? It's causing a lot of stress. That's the number one point. It causes a lot of stress because we don't know what to expect. And we just can't tell you how much money is lost, and that's the second big thing, the negative financial loss. So now, Riley, as we enter the final phase of this episode, we're going to talk about how this affects us sports writers. Because it does. Now, I must have tweeted, I might have deleted the tweet because I was just a little bit, I felt silly tweeting it, but I felt like I tweeted saying not having sports, being a sports writer, not watching sports sucks, and then people are probably thinking, well, you can still write stories, there's always a story out there. I'm like, that's true, but that's not the point. And I'm going to explain my point, because when there's sports going on, there are new stories to be written, like there's new things to talk about. That's the news in sports, like, fans always want to know what's going on in the future. Like, we can't just keep talking about the past. So when the sports are being stopped, like, all those articles I was playing right in the playoffs, like if the Mavericks, won the playoff series, think about how all the stories I could have written, and right now I can't do it. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and it affects sports writers in a really weird way. That's the one profession that really gets hit hardest. I know restaurant owners are taking a bath in bars and whatnot, but what I mean by that is this is the one profession that gets uniquely hit hard by the absence of sports. I know a lot of people really care about sports and are emotionally invested into it, but if you're a writer, you're sort of stuck just hitting the high notes and going back and talking about history. So the people who rely on the scoop or the breaking news are in a bad place right now.
See,
And
that's my
not
point.
just to say us.
With the suspensions of sports, we don't have the scoops. Therefore, we don't have a new story to give the world. See, especially if you've written, if folks, if y'all have read my soccer articles, you'll know when the Champions League is going on. I write stories like after Liverpool lost the first leg game against Atletico Madrid. I wrote an article explaining whether or not if Liverpool is under pressure. Those are the stories I write. See, and when the cancellations like that happen, I can't write stories the way I do. Like, I don't write recaps like SportsCenter. The way I write recaps is I use a method called the three take method. I'm sure you've seen those articles, Wiley. Three takes on this game, and I sort of explain what happened in a certain way, but I also make sure there's one of the takes is all the facts. And when there's no when the sports are canceled, there are no new facts to put in. Like when somebody breaks a record that's been sitting there for like 100 years. See? There's no story. There's nothing to say. All I can say is write a story saying breaking this record remains to be seen, and that's just delaying it. That's just delaying something that's inevitable. It's not giving, the point is, it's not giving the audience something new. It's not giving them something to look forward to. That's why we're affected by it a lot. That's why as sports writers are affected, because we don't have a scoop. We don't have what we need to give the audience what they want. And it sucks. And I'm doing my best. I mean, I'm doing my best to survive. I mean, I'm still writing articles now and then, every now and then. I wrote one yesterday on regarding the trade of the Stephon Diggs trade. Now, as far as the NFL goes, I mean, at least there's that. There's still the NFL, but the NFL is just not enough. We need more. Like, sports writers, we need something to keep us busy. Just like the fans need something to keep them interested. It's a process about staying fresh. It's not about we can't go idle, because going idle just it has a real effect. Like when a sports writer is hot and he goes idle, like his writing style just gets negatively affected. I've seen that happen. I mean, it happened to me back when I was in college.
Yes, continuously producing content is something you have to do to stay sharp.
Absolutely.
So for now, we just sort of have to try to hit the high notes, I suppose.
See, folks, we have to hit in the high notes, but also, just like the fans and the athletes and the executives, we just have to sit there and think, what is going to happen next, because just like them, we don't know what to expect. Because believe it or not, folks, people have asked me if I know anything. I'm like, guys, what I know is what I see on Twitter. I mean, Twitter is a huge source like for updates. Like sports writers, we have to we have to rely on Twitter to give us the updates and scoops that we need. It's just how it goes. Because so what I'm trying to say, folks, is Wiley and I, we're sports writers. We're as concerned, and we're looking for updates just like everybody else is. We're trying to learn from this, and just like everybody else, we're just trying to sit there and write it out.
All right, I think we've sufficiently covered it, Alex.
Yes, indeed we have. Now, folks, as we go, my prayers are with everybody. I know the whole thing's stressful, but we gotta stay together. We gotta stay strong. We're gonna get through this. We got this, folks. Y'all have a good night.
Easy.